Hello, hello, hello. I come to you today with a review of Sarah Waters' The Little Stranger, a 2009 Gothic suspense novel set in a 1940s post-World War II, post-Empire rural England, set on the estate of the Hundreds Hall, where the Ayres family is sitting in their rotting mansion, um, being haunted by ghosts or haunted by history and their own their own past. It's a story told by Dr. Faraday, no first name, a middle-aged doctor who has his own intertwined past with the Hundreds and the Ayres family. Sarah Waters is a Welsh author. This is her fifth novel. She's written six novels so far. Probably most notably is Tipping the Velvet and Fingersmith. I've actually read of the only other novel I've read by her is Fingersmith, which I really enjoyed, which is set very much in the Victorian time. And is told from the perspective of kind of women, kind of the underclass. And while this novel kind of shares that, it's that Dr. Faraday is somebody who comes from very much kind of the lower classes and has kind of risen up to become a doctor. It's told from a male perspective this time, which becomes significant as the novel goes on. Waters seems to kind of really kind of immerse herself in a time period, often kind of really sucking up kind of like period details and kind of styles of storytelling from the novels of the actual time. I've read only kind of a little bit in this time period, but definitely something like Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. There's certain images in here that I was like, oh yeah, I can see Rebecca in here. Maybe also Patricia Highsmith, Strangers on a Train. Very much kind of it's that post world kind of dark noirish kind of miserable setting. So the novel follows kind of the series of sort of all the unfortunate incidents that happened to this family of, of madness, of suicide, of murder, through of the Ayres family of Roderick, who was a pilot during World War II, was wounded, is scarred, and also has what seems to be PTSD, is definitely suffering psychologically from his war experience. Mrs. Ayres, the mother of the two Ayres children, who she seems to be kind of, there's just sort of like, this is a family that used to be super rich, or was rich and affluent and was kind of that kind of thing, and has fallen. So she's kind of suffering from that. This is very much their land, their land rich, but they have no money and they've been selling off their property for years and years. Mrs. Ayres also has the thing of, she had a child before Roderick and Caroline, her daughter, and that child died. And there definitely is there's definitely lingering issues with that and how she relates to her children and how her children relate to her here. And there's Caroline, the surviving daughter of the Ayres family, who seems actually, maybe like a lot of women, actually had what they would call a good war. She got released from this kind of cloistered environment and got to be out and kind of doing stuff and being active and stuff like that. But with the end of the war, she got called back to be the dutiful daughter to basically nurse Roderick. This is time when anything like psychological was seen as deeply shameful, and so they kept it in the family. And she's kind of been sucked back into that, and she is, as much as the other two are sort of slowly being kind of crushed by their history, their obligation as being kind of aristocracy in this post-war landscape, post-empire. The labor government's in charge. There's definitely lots of kind of stuff of like, oh, they're just being terrible to us, the aristocracy. They're giving us terrible terrible kind of terms and stuff like that, and we can't get anywhere. And it's very much kind of these individuals who have their own issues, but are also getting slowly kind of crushed by just the remorseless move of history that doesn't really care about, them as individuals, and the people around them who've basically been under them all this time, now rising up and getting to be kind of independent and have their own lives and their own wants and desires, and it doesn't have to be all sublimated to this tiny little rich clique. So there's definitely kind of all the class resentments. I called this a gothic novel. I called this like kind of haunting. It's definitely scale back. Like, this isn't like, we're going to get ghosts and spooks or stuff like that. It's very kind of, it's psychologically kind of dread and slow little incidents of, objects getting moved, of strange burn marks on the walls. There's just that steady disquiet and tension and dread, which is very much mirroring the psychological state of the characters in the book. If you can't kind of get into them, if you can't sympathize with them on a kind of a certain level, even as rich aristos, it's going to be kind of tough to get through. And then there's Dr. Faraday, no first name. He refers to himself as nobody because nobody sees him; they only see his doctor's bag, and the novel opens with him having his memories of being 10 years old and visiting the heirs estate when they still had money at an empire fete. So literally kind of the empire front and center, where they were handing out medals to the neighborhood children. So and his mother worked at the nursery even before that, back when probably it was the nursery with the first of the heirs children who died. But he is somebody who has worked his way up. His parents are very much kind of working class, but he's gotten enough education and worked his way up to become a doctor, which is like social mobility, but he sort of mobilized himself out of the working class, but he's also still very much an outsider, with kind of the upper crust. In some ways, he attaches himself to the heirs family. Part of it is just sort of self-interest. He wants to get up in the world, and he figures this is a way he can climb his way up, but he's very much not of that world is either. The book is as much a study of him as this strange kind of frustrated, longing outsider, as it is about the heirs family itself. And it's one of these books where, as you go along, you get a darker and darker view of Dr. Faraday. It is a big book. It is 400, almost 500 pages long. The pace is slow. It is kind of slowly building up dread. It's slowly kind of dealing with kind of psychological portraits of the family. As I said, I think as you go along, I'm fascinated by Dr. Faraday, but you become less and less on his side. He becomes more and more of a creep himself. There's at one point where the novel moves away from Hundreds Hall, which I don't know, it's that thing of we move away from Hundreds Hall, where it's like kind of the gothic stuff, and it makes it feels like there's a big lull right there where we're not in the kind of the gothic, we're not in the kind of the spirit thing, and it makes sense because we're watching it from Dr. Faraday's point of view. But still, it's like, come on, let's get through this point. When you get to the end, you realize why it's there, but it was just, as you're reading it, it was kind of frustrating. So yeah, in the end, this book really delivered for me. It's that mix of the psychological and the spiritual, where I'm not somebody who believes in kind of, ghosts or spirits and stuff like that. But I am a believer in how I think that is an older language of how people expressed psychological and historical states. I think this book does a really good job of capturing that a really depressing the death of the empire, but before the death of the empire, the death of the aristocracy, but before kind of a rebirth of England as something new. Obviously not a egalitarian utopia, which I think I could check with anyone who lives in the UK now that's not the case. But it's the death of this, and the death of this is bound to conjure up spirits and little strangers, and often a lot of them are pretty malevolent, especially if you're one of the people who's caught in history's grind. So really, really, really enjoyed that, and I will go on and read more of Sarah Waters. Definitely, I found this one obviously library sale. I blathered. More videos later.